talk about movies, maybe a joke or two. It's pod on the cob. It's pod on the cob.
Welcome, everybody, to another bonus episode of Pod on the Cob. Pod on the Cob is the only podcast I am proud to boast on the whole interweb that is about corn and movies, and more specifically, movies with corn in them. But bonus episodes, we tend to be a little bit more cash. We sort of just talk about movies and/or maybe someday we'll just do one that's just corn. Who knows? But yeah, bonus episodes are more casual. My name's Tyler, and I'm joined with my co-host, as always, Steph. Steph, say hi.
What up?
What up? And today, despite my cheery voice and chipper demeanor, we're actually talking about something that's not like super happy. Although this person has brought a lot of like joy into our lives. But we are finally talking about David Lynch, artist, director, songwriter, just
Legend,
unique person. David Lynch, for those of you who are like not in the know, which would be really surprising to me, passed away earlier this year. And we've been wanting to do an episode about him since the passing, and we just had other episodes that we wanted to get out first. But we're finally doing it. So this will be coming out like a month after he passed away. Yeah. So bonus episodes, you know, we don't review a specific movie. We don't have some of the same like I mean, here's actually, I'll just tell you exactly what I mean when I say we don't have the same kind of planning involved. Not only do we not really have a plan for this episode, we have a loose plan. Believe it or not, other episodes of the show are actually really structured, and we have like a whole idea of like what we want to do. I don't know. Do you think people would buy? Do you think people buy that when I say that?
They might.
It's true.
Hang on. Don't go back and listen to episode 1 if you want to hold us to that. But
yeah,
anything after that, you know. We've got our little outlines. We're like little studious people over here making plans.
And we know like we want to talk about this before that and then that before this. Sometimes our editor Nina will get in and rearrange things, but we usually have like a very strict structure. And we've only done one bonus episode so far. But they tend to be a little bit more like loose and like more casual.
Yeah.
What'd you say last time? They're kick your heels up and shoot the shit with your friends?
Shooting the shit. Yeah. Crack open your cold one.
Right.
And sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, we're not in January anymore, so you don't have the dry January excuse.
No.
You should.
It's get fucked February.
But maybe tonight instead you pour yourself some black coffee.
Oh.
You enjoy a donut.
And you have a little slice of cherry pie.
Because we're talking about David Lynch. Yeah, here's how not structured tonight's episode is for me. I didn't even remember. I took notes on what I wanted to talk about. And then I just didn't bring my notebook to your house. Yeah. So I don't even have my notes with me.
Listen, David Lynch would probably have said you don't need that notebook.
He would say to pull from the interior, I think, a little bit, right? And pull from your intuition. So that's what we're going to be doing. That's what you have notes. That's what I'll be doing.
I have like 5 lines of notes that I jotted down just like 2 hours ago. But, you know, I've got notes in my mind.
When I was taking notes earlier today, I noticed I had a similar kind of thing happen where I was like writing down things that like weren't even really notes. Like I wrote down like talk about Twin Peaks. It's like, yeah.
I wrote, underneath, like I always have to write like the title of what we're doing in my notes, and like, you know, I'm very like label oriented, so I like give everything a title and whatever. And the first line of like my official notes is Twin Peaks and me, and a little heart.
I really like that, though. Yeah. It's really sweet.
Yeah.
Twin Peaks. So we want to talk a little bit about like our individual histories with David Lynch. But before we even get there, I think it's really important just to note that Pod on the Cob wouldn't exist. I think I'm actually going to be bold and say this, and maybe I'm completely just using hyperbole, but I don't think that Pod on the Cob would exist if not for David Lynch, because some of my earliest conversations with you So a little background, actually. Stephen, we never really talked about this on the podcast, but the reason why we wanted to do Pod on the Cob in the first place was because we just incessantly talk about movies with each other whenever we see each other. And we end up,
and TV shows.
And TV shows. And we always end up in a corner somewhere at any party or any social gathering.
For like a long time.
And we love it. Like, I love doing it with you. I love talking about movies with you. I've always like appreciated your perspective. And you've got a unique style, and we don't like all the same things, which makes it fun to talk to you. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we realized we both liked really early on was specifically Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
You were the log lady for Halloween this year, but we bonded really. We knew each other for years.
Yeah.
Steph was my brother's best friend for forever. So we were always in like the same circles. But there's this thing that happens for me with David Lynch fans, where when you find out that someone else likes something he's made or likes him in general, I just want to talk about him nonstop with them. And I really attribute a lot of our talking about movies to us having this, like, we found out we had this mutual love for Twin Peaks, and it really turned into this thing where it's like, that's the earliest quote unquote movie or whatever I remember sitting down and talking about with you. Like, oh my God, let's talk about, you liked Twin Peaks, let's talk about
this.
I
actually have a super, do you like remember the moment?
No, bring it on.
Okay, I remember very well. I have like an ironclad memory when it comes to these things. So
right on.
I remember, like Tyler said, I've been best friends and been in like Tyler's family for a long time, with Tyler's little brother. And so I've been around forever, and happened to move back sort of to town and got invited over to your place. This like your old like three places ago.
Okay.
And your neighbors were like having a get together. So we're like, oh, we'll walk across and like hang out with your neighbors. Your neighbors were super cool. Like, it was a really fun just like get together. And you and I started talking. I must have been like rewatching Twin Peaks or something, and it came up. We started talking about Twin Peaks. Started talking about how like, because for me, Twin Peaks is like was like very mind-blowing. Yeah. Like that could exist.
Yeah.
And I remember like talking about it with you and all of the things you were saying, and all like I hadn't really talked about it in depth with anybody before, and to like hear somebody else have similar sort of like their mind was also blown watching Twin Peaks, or like the art of Twin Peaks and David Lynch, and like the actors and like everything that's involved in that show. And I think we probably talked about it the entire like gathering, and like didn't really talk to anybody else. So sorry everybody else that was there. You probably don't remember this, so that's good.
Definitely they don't.
But I just remember thinking like, oh, okay, yeah, this is like a super cool thing, and this is a super cool person, and this is awesome.
I don't remember that specific
memory.
Was
probably like, dude, that was probably like, oh my gosh, what, 7
at least
8 years ago?
Yeah.
It's a long time ago.
And like that's when I say that's what seemed to kick off, that this show or this artist is what kind of kicked that off for us. Hearing you tell that story, I feel even more reinforced in that opinion, and that's where we started doing this.
I agree.
Because Twin Peaks is fun to talk about.
Yeah.
David Lynch in general is fun to talk about. That's why we wanted to do a whole podcast about him. But Twin Peaks is specifically fun to talk about. And I think we kind of said, when we were coming up with a plan for this episode, that we will spend time at the end of this episode talking specifically just about Twin Peaks. But like the world of Twin Peaks, and like more specifically the worlds that like David Lynch, I guess more broadly I should say, not specifically, the worlds that David Lynch like creates in anything he's making, there's just nothing like them. People try to imitate them, and hey, by the way, keep trying. Like, I have nothing against that. Like, I'm playing Silent Hill 2 right now, and it is so David Lynch influence, and I love it. He influenced so much music and so many video games and shows and movies. Yeah. And I'm definitely not bashing anyone for trying to imitate it. I hope we keep seeing that.
We want more of that content.
Totally, 100%. But like, it's so unique, and it's so hard to capture. Twin Peaks and most David Lynch, not all, but most David Lynch things, they for me, they hit this sweet spot of, I love horror, I love being kind of creeped out, I love being scared, I also love there being a little bit of like hope around the
like
edges.
lighthearted.
Yeah.
In a way, which is funny. Which is funny to say.
Right. And Twin Peaks is specifically that, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would say the same thing about like Mulholland Drive
sure.
or something in Inland Empire, but like Twin Peaks specifically has that vibe, and like other things do too. Like I rewatched like Eraserhead recently, and I rewatched Blue Velvet, and there is this weird soft edge to it where it's like kind of like a silver lining around this little dark cloud. And yeah, I just think that he had such a unique voice and a way of seeing the world that, yeah, just fun to talk about.
So Tyler, get us started then. Like we're saving Twin Peaks for a little bit. So what are like some of the movies or what's your like history with David Lynch and his, cause you know,
yeah,
I know when we connected on it, but like, what's your history with it?
So my history with David Lynch actually starts in a really funny way. It starts with Lost, of all things.
What?
Yeah, isn't that weird?
That's a trip.
So we were watching Lost, and Lost was, for what it was at the time, Lost was groundbreaking for when it came out. You know, and one of the things that made it groundbreaking was this like this mystery of like what's going on and all these little hints and like putting them together, and you want to try to solve this mystery of like what the island is. And I remember watching it and my dad being like, I already liked The X-Files.
Yeah.
I liked Lost.
Hell yeah.
And my dad just being like, we should watch this show that was on when I was like, you know, like whatever. It was like 89 or whatever.
Yeah,
so like right when I was born.
You were crawling.
Yeah, we should watch this show called Twin Peaks. I'll bet you it's like Lost. And so we started watching we bought the box set, sight unseen. We didn't even we just went to Borders and we bought the box set.
Oh my God, I love this.
And we started watching it, and two things happened very quickly for us. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you watch this with Grady?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, with my brother. Yeah, two things happened right away. One, it was nothing like Lost. There's the mystery and all of that, but beyond the mystery,
no, it is nothing like Lost.
It's nothing
Wait, you
like
mean
Lost.
Agent Dale Cooper's not like Jack?
Jack Shepard? No, it's nothing like Lost, and they can both exist and be totally good.
Totally, yeah.
But not only is it nothing like Lost, but
I love that.
I started to get more into that. Like
Okay.
I was like, oh,
yeah, because you like
I like this more.
It's like surreal.
It was really surreal.
Dreamlike. Whereas Lost is a little more, especially like that first season. It's kind of like
more
what
structured
you
and
see.
straightforward. Yeah. So I was like, I started to really fall in love with it, and I actually continued watching it without the rest of my family. So that got me interested, right? So then I watched like Elephant Man. I watched Mulholland Drive. And Mulholland Drive I really liked, but I just like really wanted everything to be Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of didn't really, I wasn't like super into him, but I liked what I had seen. So in college I watched Eraserhead, I watched Inland Empire, I watched Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart. It's hard to, the only thing that, to this day, the only thing I haven't seen from him is The Straight Story. So I think I rounded out, I think I watched everything but Lost Highway in college. And again, my impression of him was still kind of, I liked him more, but even then I was still kind of like, I just really wanted everything to be Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And I remember not liking Eraserhead. I remember really, really liking Blue Velvet. And like not really getting Inland Empire. And like not, I don't know, so like, again, still kind of figuring out how I felt about him. What I did know that I liked about him was his aesthetic, the music, and his characters. And those are things I started to slowly incorporate into my own art. When I wrote, I tried to write the way I saw his characters dressing and acting and talking. And I tried to listen to music that was similar to his, but I still hadn't really hooked. He hadn't quite hooked me yet with his movies all the way. And then once I graduated from college, I rewatched a lot of the movies I just mentioned. So at this point, I'm probably like early to mid 20s, and I'm at this point I would consider myself like fully obsessed. And I was starting to say that everything I was seeing from him, I was loving. I saw Dune finally. I hadn't seen Dune yet.
Yeah.
I loved Dune, and all of this culminates for me in the Twin Peaks: The Return coming out, which
2017,
Shit. Which I think is the greatest. That season of Twin Peaks, I think, is the greatest thing that's ever been on television.
Wow.
Yeah, but I truly think that Twin Peaks: The Return is the greatest thing that's ever been on television. I could talk about it all day. Now, we're not going to talk about The Return too much on the podcast, though, because there's corn in it, and we want to do an episode about it someday. It goes for Fire Walk with Me. We want to do a devoted episode to Fire Walk with Me. And we want to do a devoted episode to The Straight Story someday as well. All of those movies have corn in them. So we're not going to go into detail on really any of these movies
into the
tonight.
stories per se.
But that's my, I meant for that to be brief, and it was very long.
That was beautiful.
Oh,
that was
thanks.
very eloquent. I love that love story.
What about you?
Mine is a little shorter, I feel like, but no less meaningful. I love it because it also has to do with your family. So this is like early college, and I like went traveling and was like, I want to see things that are different, and I want to like experience art, right? I was in like that phase. And so Chris and I, my now husband, then boyfriend, saw Twin Peaks. It was streaming on Netflix, and we like watched a trailer, and we were like, what the fuck? This is so cool. Like, this is so weird. We love every second of this. And again, we had just like watched all of X-Files. Like, we've always been a fan of like all those things throughout high school too. So it was kind of just like right on time to discover this like old show. And we started watching it, and we went and visited your brother, so Grady. We've been talking about a lot about this episode, and he was like, oh yeah, Twin Peaks, like, hell yeah, I love Twin Peaks. Like, and we watched like the entire first season together. We were like bumming it at his house for a couple weeks and just watched Twin Peaks, and kind of just became fascinated with like, honestly, the theme. So like just the intro, the theme song, there's nothing like it. I love like a theme song. My rule when I watch shows is like, especially nowadays, you always have the option to skip the theme and da-da-da-da. And themes sometimes aren't great. But I always like have to watch the theme song at least once. Like on my first watch through of a show, of an episode, like you have to see the theme song. Otherwise, like, are you really watching the show, right?
Yeah, I have the same rule, by the way.
Yeah. So, and I feel like David Lynch, like in Mark Frost, like I don't want to forget Mark Frost, who helped with Twin Peaks, but that theme is so incredible, and the music is amazing, and every shot is gorgeous, and I feel like I'm watching I'm watching like a painting or something, like I'm watching art, right? And so I was hooked from then. I love Kyle MacLachlan, so just like all the characters, the actors, I don't... Listener, if you have never seen Twin Peaks, please go and watch it, because it truly is like a great show. Yeah. But like, it's just, you think you're watching a murder mystery, and then you think you're watching, and you're like, what is happening? And I just loved that feeling. So similar to you, where I was introed with Twin Peaks, and then was like, oh, like this guy's got a bunch of other movies. And I like surreal, I like mysterious, like I like drama, but I'm also like, I don't want to feel like too unsettled. So there are some David Lynch movies that I just haven't seen. That's fair because it's a different kind of unsettling than like a horror, like a slasher movie or something. Yeah. But I can still, appreciate the art. But I'm pretty sure I watched Dune first, and because also I'm like a big fan of sci-fi. Mm-hmm. It's a famous novel series, and love it. Love Kyle MacLachlan. Like, if you haven't seen the like David Lynch Dune, right? It's not Timothée Chalamet. Like, it's great. David Lynch's Dune is such a fun movie. I love it so much, and I just love Kyle MacLachlan. Like, truly, as an artist, I just think he's so awesome and rad and funny. I watched Mulholland Drive, which is iconic. Like, there's a lyric in a Chapel Roan song about the sex scene in Mulholland Drive. Wait, what is it? It's like that one sex scene in Mulholland Drive. What song is that? Where we'll go to hell, but I'll probably be fine. I know you want it, baby. Knows how to... Naked in Manhattan is the song.
Okay.
And she literally, like, it's repeatedly sung. It's that one sex scene. Because she's
awesome.
talking about, like, because Chappell Roan's lesbian.
Mm-hmm.
She is writing this song about, like, going to New York, to Manhattan. Her friend's visiting, and she's, like, has a crush on her friend and wants to take it a step further. And so she's like singing all these lyrics about like let's get together, like you're here, whatever. And that one sex scene in Mulholland Drive is a lyric in a Chappell Roan
That's
song.
amazing.
So yeah, I like Mulholland Drive.
Yeah.
And I saw Inland Empire again. Also didn't really get Inland Empire, I think, at the time.
Yeah. Well, at some point in the podcast, when we're done with our histories, we'll talk a little bit about the, not getting thing of David Lynch movies. Because there's something to that.
Bringing it all the way back to somewhat the modern era, Tyler famously celebrates Halloween at his and Casey Anna's house every year. And I don't know how many years it's been. Tyler, you can chime in if you want. But Rabbits plays on the TV in like one of the rooms in the house.
Yeah. So I theme out the house, and every room in the house, we put different movies and different things in the room to make, there are less creepy rooms and there are like more creepy rooms.
Yeah. And
the creepiest room is always in the bungalow in the back of the house. And every year I play David Lynch's short film Rabbits, which is just it's just a segment of Inland Empire that he turned into a short film. But it is so unsettling, and so it's genuinely way more scary than any like slasher movie or like conventional horror movie I've ever seen. And it's just this 20-minute little short film.
If you like to be creeped out and to like feel just actually creeped out and disturbed, go watch Rabbits.
It will do the trick, I promise you. And it's also a great like example of like what makes David Lynch stuff so unique, because it doesn't have a conventional, there's no story.
Nope.
Well, okay. And then, well, like I said, we'll get to that. Because does it, like what is a story?
Sure.
It's, yeah. But sorry, keep going with your history.
Well, no, that kind of takes me, that wraps it up for me.
Yeah.
Rabbits. So, now Tyler and I, like, obviously at this point we're longtime friends, whatever. And Rabbits plays every Halloween. All kinds of people are coming through, like, looking at it and going, what the actual fuck is this? Like, I've never heard of this. And it's just a blast because it kind of sparks the conversation of like, yeah, this is a David Lynch thing. Like, isn't that crazy? Oh, is that the guy who did Twin Peaks? Have you ever seen Twin Peaks? And it's kind of a fun conversation starter.
Yes. I'm always trying to get people to watch Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it right now. So here's my pitch to the listeners of the podcast. If you're curious about David Lynch, if you're seeing in the news that this guy died, and all these celebrities that you really like are coming out and celebrating his life, because celebrities are coming out. Andy Cohen interrupted his podcast with the Severance cast just to let them know that news just broke that David Lynch had died. And you see everyone from like Ben Stiller to Patricia Arquette, who's in Lost Highway, and they're all reacting to it, right? He was a, not only is he an incredibly famous, well-regarded director in his own right, in terms of pop culture, but the people will say something like, "Oh, so-and-so is a musician's musician or a comedian's comedian," like other comedians,
totally.
like Norm Macdonald is a comedian's comedian.
Totally.
Yeah, David Lynch is like a Hollywood. Staples Hollywood staple, and you start to see all these people talk about him now that he's passed away. So yeah, my pitch to you, if you're listening to this podcast, is go give Twin Peaks a try.
Yeah, like for real.
Yeah, go give it a try. Start there. I always, and I know it's obnoxious when people say this, like it really gets better after but like get through episode 3 of Twin Peaks. Because you got to see the dancing little man.
Well, if you can get through episode 1, you're in.
You get through episode 1, and then if you're kind of on the fence, get through episode 3. And if you're still on the fence, then it's probably not for you, because that's where things start to get a little bit weirder and stuff.
And it's like smoke a little bit of weed. And
it does help a little bit. But like, yeah, give Twin Peaks a try, and then if you like Twin Peaks, my recommendation, and I think everyone would probably recommend this in different ways, is I would go Blue Velvet, and then Mulholland Drive, and then you can kind of just pick and choose from there what you want to see from him. But like Blue Velvet's much more grounded and realistic. it has those kind of grounded, like Blue Velvet explores the themes in Twin Peaks that are about like a sweet innocent place on the surface with a dark undercurrent and a dark belly, right? And then like Mulholland Drive kind of explores like the psyche and the idea of like things happening that may or may not be real inside of us. And like I think those two movies are the ones that like those are I listened to the last podcast on the left a lot. Okay. It's one of my favorite podcasts, which is not going to yield any shout out from them or anything, but I'll say it anyways. And they did an episode in memoriam of David Lynch recently, and they said the way they said it is perfect. So I'm just going to quote them. They said Blue Velvet is his best movie. Mulholland Drive is actually his best movie. And Twin Peaks: The Return is the greatest thing he ever made.
Shit.
And I agree with that 100%. It's hard for me to say that Twin Peaks as a whole is the best thing because it is marred a little bit by a sort of weak, rough patch in the second season where, that's the reason I say it's not I don't think that Twin Peaks is the greatest show ever made, but Twin Peaks is my favorite show, even if I don't think it's, and I think that, and like I said earlier, I think The Return, that specific season of Twin Peaks is like the greatest like season of television.
I don't know if I actually knew that you felt that way.
Yeah. That's
kind of epic.
So I would say like, give Twin Peaks a try, like really give it a try.
Yeah. And I honestly, I don't know, like probably a lot of our listeners have watched Twin Peaks.
Yeah, but I know there's a few out there, you know who you are, because some of you, we've talked about watching it together soon. I know there's a few out there.
Okay, listen.
Yeah, and finish it. That's my real recommendation.
Don't be a quitter.
Don't be a quitter. Finish it, because like, spoiler alert. And I guess this is a nice segue into the weirdness of David Lynch's like style of creation. But like, spoiler alert, it doesn't really matter who killed Laura Palmer. That's surface level what you're trying to figure out in Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks is about so much more than that. And until you get to the end of it, it's hard to grasp. And you have to watch Fire Walk with Me, the movie tie-in. But until you've watched all of it, it's hard to grasp. It's easy to just like put it on the surface level and be like, it's about detectives trying to solve a crime. I guess it sometimes is about that, but it's really not about that.
That's what I love about it.
Same here. Yeah. It's and like this, that's why I wanted to segue, I guess, into like, David Lynch doesn't make things that are he doesn't make very straightforward things, I guess, is the way I would describe it.
Yeah. So let's see. Should we kind of talk about how like the style of David Lynch, like what we like about the style, the artistic style? We both kind of touched on it a little bit with our personal testimonies, if you will. And, I think we both have been inspired by like the artistic style is just so unique.
Yeah.
And that's the only word I'm going to ascribe to it. Right. So yeah, okay, let me phrase it a little different. Give me some like style things that you love about David Lynch.
I love, first off, I just love his aesthetic. So I love that there are reoccurring visual motifs that he uses a lot of. Strobe lights to indicate like terrifying moments are used really often. I love his use of headlights along roads, when that happens in Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, Twin Peaks: The Return. I like the way that I like the settings that he puts his characters in. There's like a diner. There's like a diner in every David Lynch thing. He loves using diners, but they don't all look like the same diner. Like they all have like their own charm and character to them. His use of settings in general, the way that he can make a place that traditionally wouldn't feel scary, and the way that he can make a place that would maybe normally be kind of uncomfortable not as uncomfortable. Like he has this way of like, and I don't know exactly how he does it, but he has a way of like shifting your perspective on an area. So here I'll use two examples. Okay. The two examples I'll use are in Blue Velvet, which I just rewatched, and I'll do my classic Letterboxd shout out. Woodward Dibble on Letterboxd. I review movies there, as often as I'm watching them. I just rewatched Blue Velvet, and I gave it a 5 out of 5, which is very rare for me.
Wow.
And it's even higher than I thought I was going to give it, because I'd seen it before. I rewatched it. That's the only movie of his I've rewatched since he passed away. I started Twin Peaks again, and I rewatched Blue Velvet. I plan on watching more, but that's the only one I've watched. And Blue Velvet is about like this cute, sweet little suburban area that, as the movie goes on, you start to realize it has this super gross underbelly of like there's a really horrible thing happening in that town. And the way that he can take a like neighborhood setting that should feel comforting and like sweet and nostalgic to you and make it terrifying is so like clever. And then the juxtaposition to that for me would be like, I know Eraserhead is kind of in general just uncomfortable to watch, but like Eraserhead, like there's like comedy that comes out of these settings that are like gross and like kind of fucked up, but you're like laughing in the scenes that they're kind of funny. So I don't know, the way he can do that, like flip it on its head, is always kind of fun. I could go forever. Your turn. You talk.
I love how, and I think a lot of things will kind of feed off of what you said, but like I really love how he can paint a picture for you, like just through like the visual media, and like you can feel very familiar with what's happening and also very unsettled at the same time. Like,
yeah,
there's a feeling of knowing exactly like what he's trying to say. Like, oh, I've been there. Like, oh, I've met that person. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
But at the same time being like, okay, but this is like kind of weird, like kind of twisted. Like it almost like makes your hair stand up on end. And I like that feeling. I like being kind of like surprised, I guess, in that way.
Yeah.
I mean, again, going back to Twin Peaks, I love like the characters are amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's so much depth to everybody. Nobody's ever just how they're presented or how they present themselves. There's layers to people, and which I genuinely feel like is a unique thing in that medium. Like, and we talk a lot about movies and different types of movies and whatever, and like I feel like a big critique we give is like the characters don't feel real. Like there's not a lot of depth. Like where, you know, this is kind of just, they're not believable. They're just like clearly just written down on paper.
Or you don't care about them.
Yeah, or it's like just the actor reading the script or whatever. And I feel like the characters that David Lynch writes are like very like fleshed out. Like they're people,
yeah,
you know, which I think is cool. They're dynamic or whatever.
He loves his characters.
Yeah.
He's not, there's no wasted characters. He loves the woman behind the counter at the diner who's selling the pie as much as he loves the main character detective trying to solve the crime. He even loves, I feel like he might even like love his villains. Like they all have such depth to them. And it is easy to be like LOL random, you know, like I know so many people who like seem to think that David Lynch is like they seem to get a very surface level thing out of him, where it's like everyone does a random thing. They're all random. She has an eye patch. That's random. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, she's more than the eye patch. No, there's a genuine love he has for the characters. I mean, you watch Twin Peaks and tell me that David Lynch wasn't in love with Laura Palmer.
Absolutely.
You know, he loved her.
Let's just jump into it. Let's segue.
Okay.
Twin Peaks.
Wait, before we one more thing.
Okay.
Because there's one thing that we've left out that I want to mention, which is the music that he uses in his movies.
Oh, okay.
Just because we talk about things we love about him.
Yeah.
And this is also a good segue into Twin Peaks.
Music too.
Well, the one thing I want to say is because he uses Angelo Badalamenti.
Yeah. Angelo.
Who's also passed away in the last few years, and his score on Twin Peaks is legendary. And you know, when I got news of, so I've kind of told friends, I've probably said this to you in the past. I've told friends and Caseyana in the past that there are only 4 celebrities that I think will be like day stoppers for me the day they die. Where like the day they die, my day kind of stops for the rest of the day, and that's what I'm doing is I'm thinking about them. Because I don't consider myself very like parasocial. Like I don't consider myself like a big like I like really love this one celebrity. And I always said David Lynch was one of those 4.
Wow.
And
Who are the other three?
The other three are Tom Waits,
Okay.
Neil Young, and Tim Heidecker, who, let's be honest, Tim Heidecker is probably going to outlive me. Let's be honest. And Tim Heidecker also did a cute thing after David Lynch died about talking about how influenced him and Eric were when they made, by David Lynch, when they made Tim and Eric's Awesome Show, Great Job, how influenced it is by David Lynch and stuff. And you can totally see it. So I held it together really well that day. Casey texted me and just said, I'm really sorry. Those are the only words, 3 words. I'm really sorry. And without even knowing, without any other context, I just knew, David Lynch died.
Whoa.
That text she's texting me this because David Lynch died. I knew it.
That's crazy.
And I went to my phone and I opened up my mail app on my phone, and the top thing was a New York Times report saying he had died. I just knew it. I knew in my heart, and I kept it together. I was like, okay, you know what? Like he had emphysema. I was kind of ready for this, and I went on with my day, and I was doing so good. I had my shit together, and then I heard the Twin Peaks theme.
Dang.
And I burst into tears.
Oh. We should play it right now.
Okay, ready?
Go.
Wasn't that nice?
That was amazing.
That was so nice.
Love
it was as beautiful as I remember it being. But so I just had to mention the music, I guess. And then on top of that, he also just chooses great music in his movies in general.
I feel like the music is what adds to feeling fully immersed into whatever's happening on screen. And it happens a lot in Twin Peaks. It happens a lot in The Return, where there's like, like the Roadhouse or whatever. There's like music playing and you're just like vibing. It is what you're watching. It's not necessarily background. Like, it's what's happening.
No, it's part of the scene.
Yeah.
It's you're totally right. Like, that, I couldn't agree more. It's like infused into the scene. And like the Roadhouse, the end of every episode of The Return, there's like those Roadhouse segments where a band plays.
Dude, the guy
great
sweeping.
Music. The guy sweeping to that 10-minute song.
Yeah, that was great.
And then like he uses Chris Isaac in Wild at Heart, so you can hear like what's that song? Wicked Game by Chris Isaac. The one's like, and I'm never falling in love.
Yeah.
Roy Orbison, he uses like a candy colored band. They call this handband whispers.
Dang, dude.
He just uses great music.
Yeah.
And I think we talked so much about his visual style.
Yeah.
I just had to mention the sound and the music. He also, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know this, I know you do, but like David Lynch was an incredible musician, and his music is worth listening to. Go listen to Dark Night of the Soul by David Lynch on Spotify as soon as you're done listening to this podcast. It's a great song.
Wait, we can even play it right now.
Okay, here it is.
Wow, that's a good song.
I told you it was good. Go listen to Cold Wind Blowin'. Anyways, sorry to derail your segue, but I just had to mention the music really fast.
No derailing happening here.
But you want to go into like Twin Peaks specifically? Was that the segue? Yeah,
we can kind of wrap up like with Twin Peaks. We opened with Twin Peaks.
Sure.
We can kind of wrap it up with Twin Peaks. We mentioned at the top of the show, we like took some notes, we did some research, and just like the first sentence on the Twin Peaks Wikipedia page, I had to write down because I loved it so much, and I felt like the description of it really captured, but also made me laugh, the vibe. And it's the show is described on Wikipedia as a surrealist mystery horror drama. And I just feel like if you have a show and you have to give it 4 different adjectives in order to like describe what is happening on the show, then like it's going to be a good show. And that the 4 words are surrealist mystery horror drama kind of just like was the cherry on top.
Yeah, cherry, the proverbial cherry pie, maybe.
Yeah, even. I didn't even say that on purpose.
Yeah, we talked about surrealism a lot in this this recap of this man's life. And one thing that we said that we were going to come back to that maybe we should mention right now is he has a very unconventional way of telling stories, and you do need to go into them with an incredibly open mind. David Lynch doesn't care that you don't get his movie. And it's one of my favorite things about him.
Same.
But I will say, when I was giving you my history of how I kind of got into him, I said early, and when I was talking about the early days of my history with him, I said I wasn't really quite into him yet. Like eventually it clicked for me, but I mentioned multiple times that there were eras where I just was like trying to like him and it wasn't quite clicking. And I think for me it was because I desperately wanted to understand what all of his movies were about and what Twin Peaks was about. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I started to appreciate that doesn't matter, because they're experiential and you're supposed to be feeling something while you're watching his art. And that's the experience. And not to say there isn't deeper meanings or anything like that, but like there's this really famous interview where he talks about how like people always want me to explain the movie, and the movie is the explanation. Like he had this real mindset of like, there's nothing to explain. You saw it. What did you get out of it?
Yeah.
You know? And I think like I've seen so many people online try to figure out Twin Peaks, right? Like what was it? What was it really all about? And what does the ending mean? Because spoiler alert, the ending's fucking wild.
Yeah.
And it's
does it even really end?
I don't think it does, which is wonderful. but what the ending, like trying to like label what it's about, or like trying to label like what really happened is fun with like Lost, but it's not really fun with David Lynch, I don't think.
No.
Because that's not the point.
Yeah, I always feel like you're not supposed to get it. There's nothing actually there to get, which I just fucking love that. To me, that feels so like rebellious because, growing up and like going through school and stuff too, you read literature and you read things, poetry, and it's like, okay, like what is the author trying to portray when they say this? And what's the deeper meaning? You're always having to like analyze everything, and there's always some analytical take, whether or not the author really meant it or not. And I kind of loved like being able to, I feel like it was a first time for me too, like being able to consume art and not have to be like, what does it mean? Mm-hmm. What's the real, like, I don't get it. Like what, I have to figure it out. I think that's cool. I think being challenged in that way is a fun like experience. I think a lot of times people can't appreciate art, like even fine art, like paintings and sculpture, like people have to be like, I don't get it, like what, that just is like 3 lines on a page or whatever. And it's like you're not approaching it in the way that maybe the artist intended.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a little easier to experience that with like say Twin Peaks and David Lynch, because you're processing it in such a ingestible way. It's a murder mystery. He's an FBI agent. He's coming to small town Pacific Northwest. Like, there's families, they're teenagers, there's dynamics. But there's also like really weird, quirky scenes with like donuts and like throwing darts and like just
chocolate bunnies.
Yeah, and it's just like really weird and fun and cool. And
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Would people stop watching Twin Peaks when Laura Palmer's murder? So I'll just go ahead and spoil this. I'm not going to say any real spoilers, but I'll spoil something and just say you do find out who kills Laura Palmer, and you do find out relatively quickly into the show. About midway through season 2, you find out, and I can't tell you how many people I know are like, so I stopped watching because like that was the whole thing, right? It was like the mystery was who killed Laura Palmer. And it's just like, oh, buddy, that's not the mystery at all. The mystery is so much deeper.
Yeah.
And
the mystery is within.
And I and there is no like it's not your job as the audience member to solve anything in Twin Peaks. Your job is to sit down and watch it and enjoy it and experience it and get something out of it. And I think that, when I said that hearing the theme song made me cry when I found out he passed away, it wasn't like sadness necessarily. It was the same way I felt. I'm actually getting kind of teary-eyed thinking about this now. It's the same way I felt every time I started an episode of Twin Peaks. Because like every time I started an episode of Twin Peaks, I didn't really care what was going to happen in the episode, or like care about like who killed Laura Palmer, or care about like what the mystery is of like the person who gets stuck in the cabinet doorknob, which is a thing that happens eventually in the show. I got teary-eyed and emotional every time I started an episode of Twin Peaks and I heard that song, because I was going back to Twin Peaks and I was going to get to spend an hour there, and it didn't really matter what happened in the episode. I was just excited to be there, and be around those characters and be around that world. So for me, it's like, who cares what it's about, or who cares what the answer to the mystery is? I want to show that every time I start it, I get a little bit misty-eyed because I'm so excited to be in it.
Yeah. You could say Tyler and I are fans of Twin Peaks.
You think we've kind of given that away?
We might have.
Yeah.
We might have. So, yeah. Again, we can't say it enough. If you haven't seen it, check it out.
Yeah.
Give it a try at least.
Give it a try. It's not for everyone. Yeah. And that's okay. I get that. I
won't like fault you. And then if you haven't seen it in a while, it is a fun rewatch.
Definitely.
If you're in the mood.
Definitely.
Even just like go on YouTube and just look up like the theme. Just watch the theme. Watch the theme song.
Oh, yeah.
Or like look up some of the highlights, you know. Some of the great like little clips from it.
You know, on that note, actually, if you've seen the show before and you're kind of dragging your feet to want to rewatch it, there's a guy on YouTube named HN Films, who does an every episode of Twin Peaks ranked video. He just goes from his least favorite episode to his favorite episode, and he includes The Return and Fire Walk with Me, and it's a great video. It's a great video, and it also made me like, I was like, okay, I had just rewatched Twin Peaks, so I wasn't sure I wanted to do it all over again, and I watched this guy's video, which you get like a glimpse of every episode, just a few minutes of every episode, and I was immediately like, okay, I'm starting it all over again, because that was awesome. It just made me want to watch it all over again. But it's also just a great, it's a really, really great YouTube video, HN Films, so I recommend that one for sure. But definitely you're gonna get a glowing endorsement from both of us, and like I said, we will eventually do an episode of Pot on the Cob that's devoted to both Fire Walk with Me, the Twin Peaks movie, and we will do an episode someday that's about Twin Peaks: The Return, that last season. That's why we're not going into a ton of detail on like the plot and what happens, because we will do that someday. There's corn in it, so it isn't a bonus episode in my opinion. It's like a normal episode, but yeah, I think tonight.
Yeah, we wanted to honor a legend and a man who inspired not only us personally, but us, like, sparked a friendship, sparked a bond between your hosts at Pot on the Cob. Do you have anything else?
Lots of different ways to vibe with this guy, and I recommend. He's the most impactful artist in my life. That I haven't that I've never met personally. Right. And I just, there's a little bit of a void left with him passing away, but I'm excited. I'm also weirdly excited that, it will cause a new generation of people to, I think, get into him. And I'm hoping that you and I are helping that in some way.
Totally.
Go check out David Lynch's art. Whatever you watch or consume by him, you're making the right call. I'll just leave it there.
Thank you so much for tuning in and continuing to tune in. You guys are awesome. We love doing this. We love hearing your feedback. You can find us on social media, Pot on the Cob. You can email us, potonthecob@gmail.com. We really do love hearing about you. It actually means a lot. You can rate us on the platform you're listening to us on. And the only thing I have left to say is that there's a fish in the percolator.
There's a fish in the percolator. Another Jack Nance, another legend who's passed away.
R.I.P.
So many Twin Peaks legends passing away. Yeah, thank you all so much for listening. Those 5-star reviews, they really help. You'd be surprised how much they help us. And just telling your friends, like if you know someone who's like really into like movies or just like wants to try to goof off with us on here, please spread the word. And we will be back at the end of this month. So you're hearing this one near the end of February, but we have another episode coming out in a week from the day this episode comes out, the very end of February. And it's another big one where it's another heavy hitter. We're going to run out of the heavy hitters really quickly, and then we're just going to only be reviewing Children of the Corn movies for the next 2 years.
You have a lot there.
Hey, we love you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
And rest in peace, David Lynch.
R.I.P.